Good morning, LinkedIn, and good morning, YouTube. This is Wellbeing Wednesday with myself, Carrie Davis-Munro, and my colleague, Will Murtha. Good morning, Will.
Morning, Carrie. Long time no see.
I know. Well, the reason we've been away for a few weeks, I should say, a massive congratulations. Will has launched his most recent book, which I'm sure he will mention.
He'll show you.
He'll show us that beautiful cover. And we will be talking more about that, but it's been a labor of love and that baby has been born. And it's the root of lots of the work that we do. And we have lots of exciting things coming out of our books and what we create for you. So that's why we've had a little bit of a break. And we know that lots of people are away for summer anyway. And that's really what we're going to start our observations with today, because we have been looking at summer and the way that people wait for certain times in their life to take action, or the way that we live our lives waiting for the next break or the next holiday or the next time I might get the chance to do something that I really want. And that way we put life on hold. So Will and I really want to talk today about how to unlock what we call the code to your life, and how you can start to feel good on a daily basis, so that we are not just waiting and putting life on hold to get to a point where we feel like us, to get to a point where we feel that we are fulfilled. So this is about finding the hidden spark. And really, this is something as a coach, and Will and I talk about a lot, waking people up. And how do we wake people up? And how do we ignite that spark? And we hope that we might do a little bit of that today. But it's about building and designing, as Will's book says, designing a life and a future that you want to live every single day, and being awake to it and taking complete control of that, rather than waiting for the gaps. And what we want to do first is talk a little bit about the context, because, when we see people, and I've observed people over the last few weeks with certain behaviors, goodness me, Will, we can understand with the context of, not only here in the UK, but the macro, why people want to put their fingers in their ears and just sort of la it all away, don't we? There's a big context.
I think globally, and particularly we see it, most of our clients are you and me are UK based. And of course, the UK's got a great name and sort of heritage of fingers in the ears, don't deal with your emotions, numb it, push it down, avoid it, run away. So, we're chronically bad, probably, in the top 5-10% of the world, as far as we just are not great at expressing our emotions. And I think, what's going on for people right now, if you look at the patterns, we're blessed, aren't we, Carrie? Because people kind of allow us into their world. We get the bonnet up. They tell us things that often they've not confided, in their close loved ones and their friends and family and people at work. So, they get very real with us. That's the whole point of coaching, counselling, therapy. And I think what's happening for people now, we've come out of a 2-year pandemic, which was stressful enough, and we've not really even processed the emotions of that properly yet, and all its myriad forms around it. But on top of that, we've come straight out the gate, straight out the tunnel, and we're facing, extortionate kind of power energy bills increases, food hikes, shortages, problems with supply and supply chains, mortgage rate increases. We're just exhausted. We're overwhelmed. We're overthinking our problems. We're stressed. It's almost like anxiety is the default now for many people. If you watch too much media, which thankfully me and you don't, I honestly don't know how people cope. Because if you're reading a paper and watching the news all day, you're kind of frying your nervous system, which is your emotions. And I think more people are closer to the edge, clinging on and desperate. We see this with our clients. We speak to other friends that are coaches and therapists. They give us feedback as well. We give them, more people are desperate and clinging on than we would ever hope to realize or acknowledge. And I think what we've got to do is we've got to get to a point where, we so often, you talk about the holidays, where people sort of, they live their life for their 2-3 holidays a year, one if you're lucky, that's on a kind of macro level. Well, it's also happening on a micro level, isn't it? If you think when we coach people, we hear so much about their like foot to the pedal for all week, you know, Monday to Friday, if it's a normal traditional week, or it might be Sunday to, you know, Saturday, whatever people's work weeks are, their weekend, call it, which is not always Saturday and Sunday for them. It might be one day off, but their weekend often becomes the time of excess. You know, the busy, manic kind of 24/7, never stop work week. And then they blow out at the weekends, and that might mean, you know, drinking more in the weekend than you do the rest of the week put together. It might be eating more. It might be just doing everything to excess to kind of numb, push down, run away from, avoid, dodge that kind of feeling that something's not working in my life in the everyday. And I think what is happening, it's all emotional. It's like we're not being mature enough to look at what's really going on inside of us, which is kind of what we're going to explore in a minute.
Yeah.
We're not kind of facing our truths. And really, just to kind of finish off, we need to fix a new path, because if the life that is literally happening to us is not working for us, we've got to be mindful, take the wheel, and design a life that does work for us. Because, like, as we talk about all the time, if you don't spend the time, effort, time, energy on creating the life story that you want, then certainly you're going to spend a lot of time wasted, you know, mopping up the life that you don't want.
Yeah, and we're going to look at that. We are going to look at some of the consequences that, sadly, you know, you and I are dealing with, and working with people on changing. But so I want to come back to this idea of designing your life, because when you say that to people, you know, you use that phrase, people, it's sort of like, well, what do you mean? You know, I've been through school, I had to do my duty. You know, we're on this treadmill almost. And when you say that to someone, the idea of, well, what do you mean I could be in control of, you know, pressing that stop button and actually taking bits of, you know, my life bit by bit and redesigning it? It's like, whoa, you know, it's sometimes
shock horror.
Yeah, it's like this overwhelm almost of, my goodness, I could do that. What does that mean? And I will say to people, you know, you actually spend far more time sitting down, designing, planning out your holiday away from life than you do designing your life itself. So yes, let's get to work on piecing together what lights you up, where you want to go. And most people, let's be honest, Bill, when we talk about designing your life, people are so short term and, you know, not living in the here and now in the way, and you and I talk about in the present and being mindful. But, you know, this sort of, I can only see as far as the end of the day, and my desk piled all up, you know, with all these books and these meetings, and I'm in more meetings, and, you know, I can only see this. What do you mean I can take the lid off and look further? But that's what we're talking about, isn't it? Really coming back to basics, taking it, wiping the desk clear almost. Let me take a massive hand and wipe everything off my desk here. Where do I want to start? That's what designing your life is about. And it's empowering people. My goodness me, we're going to talk about waking people up, because that's the challenge for you and I. But once we've done that, it's about empowering people to take their life bit by bit and making it what they want to be, rather than looking for a break from it, isn't it?
I mean, the thing me and you always talk about, which is an interesting metaphor, is that we've all stuck popcorn in the, you know, in the microwave. Some popcorn, you hear it, it goes off within seconds. Some popcorn takes a minute or two. You take the bag out after 3 minutes, some popcorn's not even popped. And so you put it back in the, you know, microwave, do another minute, and it's still not popped. And I think people are a bit like that as far as waking up. There are some people that are going to wake up to the pain, suffering, and loss that they're going through, and realizing, almost kind of telling themselves, I'm not tolerating this anymore. And that's a great word to kind of, you know, if you hear that word in your own head, stop, because that word is really telling you that you've reached the precipice. You've reached that kind of crucible moment where I'm not living like this anymore. I'm not putting up with all this suffering, all this angst, all this worry, all this rubbish that I let other people go past my boundaries and dump on my doorstep. You know, I'm going to take back control, going to design my own life, create my own life story. And it all starts with self-awareness, because you know, what I would say to people, and this is what you and I in different ways will say to clients early on in the process, is start noticing what's not working for you. Start noticing what you're tolerating too much now. Start noticing where you're procrastinating or not taking action. Start noticing where that daily pain and suffering is showing up and causing you grief, because, once you start noticing and you start slowing down, then you can start to put a manageable, realistic, achievable plan together to then start designing your story.
Yeah. And I'm going to come in a little while to look at the excuses that we make, because my goodness me, people make no end of excuses. So what, noticing is part of understanding what story we're telling ourselves.
Yeah.
What do we tell ourselves that we know isn't true? I always say that to people. What are you telling yourself right now that isn't true? Whether it's about physical habits that we're doing to ourselves, or whether it's about relationships, or whether it's about fulfillment in your role. What's not the truth, happening here? So I want to talk a little bit about, so people say, well, why should I do this? I'm okay. You see people on holiday, they're enjoying themselves. I say, well, I don't need to. I don't need any of that. I'm having a great time. So we're going to say, when you actively take control, oh my goodness, the benefits aren't just here and now in the short term. And I'm going to keep saying that because I do think so many people are living in the short term right now. We have got so many benefits, and I want to talk a few. Now, Bill and I, we talk from different angles, don't we, a lot of the time, but we also talk about the physical, the mental, and the spiritual. And the benefits are threefold, and we have to work on these three levels. But let's talk a little bit about the physical and what I've seen over the summer. First of all, when you take control over your life and you take control over this one life, this one body that we have for our rest of our life, we're born in the same body that we're going to die in. Yeah, our cells only change from what we put into it and what we replenish it with. What are you made of? So the first thing I'd say is, what are you made of? What do you want to be made of? Because it will determine your health in later life. It will determine not only how long you live, but it will determine how well you live. So do you want, when over 75% of us will die from an NCD, a non-communicable disease, do you want a body free from disease? We have to take action in our 30s and 40s to do that. Not to say we can't change things later, but we don't want a wake-up call when it's too late. Better relationships. If we actively know what our needs are, where we're going, what we want, then goodness me, intentional relationships are going to fulfill us far more. Productivity. You can imagine if you're getting up on a daily basis, and you and I, Bill, we both deal with, teachers, education. I guess that's the industry that stands out for me, because I see people limp to the summer holidays.
And then get ill. And then get ill.
Yeah. So better health, but productivity. If we're exhausted, if we're fed up, if we are, our energy is lacking, what are we giving when we're working, which most of us spend most of our time doing? And within that, there comes our passion and our purpose. How do we feel about the work that we're doing? So when we're talking about the benefits, oh my goodness, who doesn't want to have some passion and purpose when you wake up? We don't want to limp to the holidays, or, as you were saying earlier, limp to the weekend. And this is about motivation. Our motivation for life, for getting it right, for doing our dharma, for supporting charities, for getting to the root cause of what's going on, not only with us, but on a wider level, which we all have some responsibility for. And this is about fulfillment. And I guess what sums this up for me is really leading a life with intention, so that we can start attracting more and more of what we need, and align that with, and again, we're going to talk later about how to do this, and we'll talk about who to work with, and getting yourself a buddy perhaps. But you have to understand yourself, don't you, Will, and start with a point of, who am I? What are my needs? What are my personal values? What's the code? We were talking about unlocking the code. But we have to understand the code by which we live by, don't we, in order to feel less stress, so that we can say, that situation's come up. It's pushed all my buttons here. But according to my code, this is how I deal with it. And I feel okay with that, because I can feel that that's right for me.
I mean, the things that, we've all got different way of approaching clients in the early days, that first session, that second session, you do it a different way to I. But essentially, what we're all trying to do is finding, what's not working, what is working. What we're trying to find is, what are we refusing, flatly to either see or take ownership for. And, the big question, which is shocking for all of us, and we've all been there, by the way, I'm not kind of sort of pointing the finger out, we've all been there where we're so busy, we're so stressed, we're so just getting by the next hour, the next day, paying the bills, doing the stuff, living, bringing up families, that we've never asked ourselves the simple question, which is number one question in coaching: what do you want? That is, what do you want? What does it look like? What does it feel like? And where do you want to go? And these seem quite, like simple questions. But if you're busy, stressed, just coping with the day to day, you won't even have time to sort of step off, have a life service station break, just to take a moment to reflect and go, this ain't working for me. This is not working for me. And I think what I've always tried to say to clients is that there is a process to change. What we're talking about every single time that we jump on here, we're talking about the transformational process of change. And the big mistake we notice with behavior change is that most people, on January the 1st, New Year's Day, is the New Year's Eve sort of, promises that we make to ourselves, is the best example of this. What we do, we move to action as stage one before anything else, any other scaffolding, any other planning, any other safety nets are put in place. So we kind of move to action. We say we're going to give up drink, we're going to give up smoking, we're going to lose weight, we're going to change jobs, we're going to lose that partner, move areas, and we kind of go into gear. We think that's the right thing to do. We go right into first gear, a lot of energy, a lot of inertia, off we go. And look, first hurdle, we fall, we've got no backup plan, and we give up. And I think what I've done over the years, I tried to say to people, right, there's a 3, 4, 5-step process. Depends how you want to mold it for yourself, but simply put, in a couple of easy steps, is number one, you've got to acknowledge, see, notice, identify what's going on. Because unless you do that, nothing's going to shift. And then, the next step that comes once you start to see these things coming up and you allow the space to do it is, let's just get in my journal and start making a list of what I need to take more ownership of and take responsibility for. Because we know what we don't take on board for ourselves, we project out onto others. Oh, if it wasn't for my partner, my boss, my neighbor, I could have a great life and do what I want. If it wasn't for that, people, their children sort of taking all my time, we can get, especially when we're tired and exhausted, we get very blamey, critical, shamey, guilt. We point it out on the world, don't we, Carrie? That's the thing of being tired and exhausted. We don't really look at where we're the problem. We project it out onto others because it's easier to blame others. And then once you start that next third stage is kind of understanding. I always get people in coaching to write down the start of a sentence, of a question, to get curious. And I will get them to write down, okay, start your sentences with why, where, what, how. Get in your journal, which is get your stuff out of your head, like down onto paper, and start asking questions with those words beginning, like, when am I not happy? Where is this happening? Why is it happening? Start really asking yourself questions, because if you don't ask the right questions, you're not going to get the right answers. You're not going to get the right life. And then stage 4 is where I really start to work with the client and get them to move into action, what I call call to action, which is, the 4 steps. This is the really important one, because this is where you plan, develop goals, set standards, get self-discipline, get moving. This is where you really start to build let's do just one thing today that can move you forward and get momentum, get you off and running. Because too many people will make a lot of plans and there's too many of them. Just concentrate on the next best thing that's going to move you forward and away from the life you don't want.
Brilliant. I mean, all absolutely fantastic. And the thing I would say is, and I'm going to come back to that's when we've got a client in front of us, Will. And that's when someone knows. They might not, until we start those questions, until we start digging, until we start taking the layers off, they might not know exactly what it is that they want to change, or what the real, what they're not admitting to themselves. But what we want to instill, I guess, today is for you to sort of have that wake up call before it's too late, before before your relationship goes wrong and actually there's a really big fallout for everybody, or before your body starts crashing in ways. And I'm a great example of this. I always say to people, I do this because I got it all wrong. My body crashed in ways I wouldn't have time to explain on a half-hour LinkedIn live. But this is why we want to be your wake-up call, to make these changes, because if we don't, we're going to sleepwalk through life. Life is going to take control of you. And we always say, where do you want to be? You want to be at the wheel. You don't want to be on the back seat. We don't want you to have to put life on hold while you live for just the weekends or a few days a year, because that means you're going through a life of dissatisfaction. Life is not good enough. And as you've just said, we have exhaustion, fatigue, we have pain. Yeah. The statistics of how many of us live in pain day to day, they're off the scale. Yeah. And no wonder then that when something comes up, like, we've got these power bills, we've got the context of what's going on in the UK, but certainly worldwide. No wonder then that there's despondency and there's a lack of energy and ability to take that control. And what I see, and what you see a lot, Will, is the result of this is that we are working with clients who are always looking for their next fix. They are always looking for their next bit of pleasure without really fixing what's going on and the cause here. And then we see all of these poor habits, whether these are physical habits or mental habits, if you've just said overthinking, beating yourself up, limiting beliefs, and then we have self-medicating. And it leads to one way. If we don't put the stop button on and take control, Will, doesn't it?
I mean, you made a good point there about energy, because energy is emotion. It's the French word émouvre, to move. And I suppose to move into action at the beginning, think of a rocket. A rocket will use probably half of its fuel in the first 30 seconds of getting off on a journey that's going to be like 4 hours. It's a bit like that for people as well. People at the moment haven't often got the energy to start the change process, to get their rocket off the ground. And so it's almost like you've got to do an audit, isn't it, of going, right, I've got to chisel out some room, space, time, energy to create enough, of a platform to launch from. Because if I don't, then the change won't happen. Either you manage your emotions or your emotions will manage you. And I could swap the word emotions for life. If you don't manage your life, life will manage you. And it's a different result, and it will give you different consequences. And I think, we always talk about the tools and tips and techniques of what we should be doing or shouldn't be doing. But, I have a simple couple of ones. I know you'll come to some in a minute as well. But, I will always say, get it out, all mapped down, planned on paper. You will see your life in black and white and in glorious color in different ways if you get it out of your head and down onto paper. That's why the power of journaling. We've talked many, many times about the power of journaling. We won't go into it now, but that's a great one that works. The one that me and you know works is accountability partner. If you're going, to stop drinking, that's why AA is so popular. If you're going to a weight loss class, if you're going running to keep fit, if you're going to the gym, if you're learning about cooking, all of these things are great if you've got an accountability partner to sit with you, so that when they don't feel like it and you do, you kind of pull them along, and vice versa. And I think the big one for me is kind of self-love and self-compassion, because you've got to know, to be kind to yourself, be your own best friend, because you are going to fail and trip over hurdles and stumble down holes time and time again on your change process when you are designing, creating your own life. So get prepped for it, to be kind to yourself, be loving and compassionate, And, you have a great saying, don't you, Carrie, about the treats thing. We've got to reframe our whole attitude about what treats actually are. I mean, you explain that very well, usually.
Yeah, no, I do. It's funny, isn't it? We always hear this, the word treat and reward used, and certainly, with children. And I did an article about this yesterday and posted it. But it's the idea that, oh, well, I deserve this treat. I've worked hard, so I deserve this. Well, what do you deserve? Usually, it's an alcoholic drink, or it's an ice cream, or it's a cake. All of which we know, people know this stuff. We're not, we're never telling you anything new here. This stuff is detrimental to our health. It only takes you backwards. Yeah. Best case scenario, it keeps you where you are, but worst case scenario, in reality, this takes us backwards. And what you and I do, Will, is we push people forward into the future. So I always say, is that a future food drink action, or is it a past future food action? Is it going to propel you forward to the life that you want to have, or is it going to keep you here? And what I see in this short-termism attitude, and certainly when people talk about treats and rewards, I always say to people, well, a treat and reward surely has to benefit you. It has to do something good for your body. It has to renew the cells the way that you want them to. It has to take you forward to where you're going. And when we're talking about, your tools, tips and techniques, I always say to people, in rewarding yourself, where ultimately do you want to go? Give me your World Cup, your World Series, whatever it is, the World Cup of outcomes. Have you thought about it? And your what, when, where? What does it look like? What does it feel like? Because if you haven't gone there, how can you start moving towards it? Yeah. And that's the wake up. Understand it. And I do a range of different things for people. The first thing I say is break down your life right now. Put it into 7 sections. What does it comprise of? And the first question is, are those areas that you want your life to comprise of? And then secondly, give me a percentage that you spend in each of those time. Is that where you want to be spending life right now? Then let's scrap that and we're going to redesign it. So we've got to understand our reality and where we are in order to know how to get there and really understand our outcomes. And one of the most important things for me is, we start moving towards it, we visualize it, we take baby steps, because we've got so many options. We don't just go straight in, because as you say, we're heading for failure. But if you're still worried about taking action, I would say understand the question, the story, and what, the obstacles that you are telling yourself. What excuses are you making? Because what I always say is, it won't happen to me. Why won't it happen to you? What, are we the only invincible one in this world? It happens to most of us. So why wouldn't it happen to you? What's the reality of that? I don't know how. That's not really a good enough one either these days, Will, is there? There's, places to go, people to get help, so many ways that we can make changes and start to have agency over our life. It's too hard. It'll be a lot harder if you don't. Yeah, it'll be a lot harder.
I always, I was just reading, I've just got it here, just the last 2 lines in a little bit I wrote about personal development. And it said, now is the time more than ever to give the attention and thought to training our mind. So what do I mean by mind? I mean thoughts and feelings, and, we have a name for it, don't we? It's called personal development. And, personal development is really designing and creating a life that is going to work for you better, so that you're mindful, that you enjoy it, that you kind of awake for the process, and you're not spending half of it trying to run away from. Well, half would be good. A lot of people are trying to run away from 80-90% of it. That's not living, that's surviving, that's existing. And I think what this time of change is kind of calling forward in all of us is that now is the time that you got to take the wheel again. We've had too many years sitting in the back seat, letting the life taxi take us where it wants to go, or other people's demands. Because if you don't kind of take control, you'll end up working for other people that do know where they want to go.
Yeah.
And that's a different kind of life. And the thing that I would finish with is for me is that we actually know what's happening. We know what's going wrong. We know what needs to change. We know even what to do and how to do it. And it's trying to find the time to chisel out the time. It's rubbish that people say they haven't got time. If everyone was to map their social media time, you know, the addiction, you know, the kryptonite, I call it, you know, if people were to look at their weekly dosage of social media time, do not tell yourself you haven't got time to change.
Yeah. Well,
It's
do you know
just,
what? I agree. I agree. We hear this all the time, and in my book, I've got a page of the excuses that we use as to why we don't take action. And the first one, people say, "I don't have time." It's just not true. You know, we have agency over our choices, our decisions, our actions, and we have agency most of all on how we spend our time. It's about the priorities. So start to get your priorities in order and understand what they should be. And the biggest thing for me, I would say, is, you know, start noticing, start realizing the story that you tell yourself. Because, Will, for me, September is almost a bigger time for change than January. People have come back from their holidays, and they are like, you know, as I said yesterday, it's like the waves that you've just left on that beach. You come back and you are crashed down sometimes. Yeah. And you and I want to do is eliminate that massive crash to, yeah, I've been and I've had a break. Oh, and now, look, here I am. I'm sailing back into life, and I'm on the same level because I enjoy what I do. I love the life that I lead, and I have designed it. So September's a big time for an influx of clients because people are realizing that, you know, this actually is my new year. So I would say notice what needs changing, understand what you're telling yourself, and start to design and take control of, firstly, maybe the biggest thing. I always say to clients, look at maybe the whole of your life.
Biggest plate. What's the biggest plate on the stage?
The biggest rock that you're carrying right now.
Good place
Will,
to start.
thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. Massive topic. And I know we both feel really passionate about it. And we come back time and time again. We can get people, we can make the changes. How do we give them that wake up call? And that's what it's all about. And sometimes we have to wake up ourselves. So I hope this has been useful. As ever, give us your comments, tell us your thoughts. We'd love to know. And Will and I will be back to discuss and to wrangle with a different topic next week. Happy Wellbeing Wednesday. Till then, Will, have a lovely day.
Yeah, and see you next week, Carrie. Take care.
Yeah, take care. Bye.